Welcome to the Never Been Promoted podcast with Thomas Helfrich. Get ready for a thrilling adventure as we uncover entrepreneurial journeys and life-changing business insights every week. And now your host, Thomas.
Welcome to another episode of Never Been Promoted, where we help you unleash your entrepreneur inside you. I bring on other entrepreneurs, other experts, people around the world who are ahead of you in your journey and are going to give you some advice in your journey itself. Today, I have Mary Drumond, who is the VP, the executive, the head honcho of marketing for Neighborly here in Atlanta, Georgia, out of the Atlanta Tech Village. And Mary, how are you doing?
Hey, Thomas, how are you? I'm glad to be on and share a little bit about my journey in marketing and in entrepreneurship, in fact. And hopefully I can inspire a couple folks out there with some cool ideas and what has worked and what hasn't worked for me. And maybe it'll even get some more people on your show. Who knows?
You know, I will take good people on the show like yourself, and I think your journey, and we've talked several times off camera. Maybe give everyone a little background on you. I know you filled out the forms, but I'm going to have you just repeat all the stuff so I don't have to do it. I outsource. Some people call it lazy, but tell me about yourself a little bit and let everybody know your credentials.
Surprising though, because you added some red tape in there. Not very entrepreneurial of you, I will say.
Know, but it's enabling processes in the background.
I got you. Okay. Well, I'm down with it. So a little bit about me. I actually started my career in education. I was an early learning teacher for the first couple years of my life, and that set me down the path of opening my own company in education. And that was when I was 20. So I founded my first company when I was 20. I ran that for 11 years, and then I relocated and exited that company. And I found myself in a predicament where I could either start another business from scratch, or I had a clean slate to do whatever I wanted. And marketing was maybe my favorite part of when I was an entrepreneur and kind of running everything and wearing all of the hats. Marketing was my favorite hat. So I decided to try it on for size, but it really was a process of just kind of learning as you go and making tons of mistakes and learning a lot from people around me. But I think that when you approach anything with an entrepreneurial mindset, you go really far, really quickly. And that's kind of what happened. You're always looking for perhaps the next hack. And I say that kind of lightly because I know that it at this point, it's tech jargon and it's become ridiculous, but it's a mindset. You're not following the best practice manual, because if you're doing that, you're doing exactly what everybody else is doing and you have no advantage. So the idea that you're always trying to do the next thing and you're always staying ahead somehow, that really worked for me. And that's what kind of set me on my career path in marketing and in customer experience, which is my side hustle. And it's just an exciting place to be. I love marketing. I'm currently head of marketing at Neighborly Software, which is a GovTech company. And this is an absolute first for me because my first organization was B2C. My second organization was B2B, and now I'm B2G. So I don't know what's left, but I've got to tick off all the boxes. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
That's it. You touched on so many good things there. Let's start with that entrepreneurial mindset, because I always want to pull back to what you can learn from me, the guest, and I talk about this in the book of Never Been Promoted, available soon. Anyway, the idea is that your entrepreneurial mindset is where you're not complacent. This is in every entrepreneur. And a lot of people who want to become entrepreneurs feel this, and you feel the following: this idea that you can't just let things be. You can't just just show up for work and leave. You want to do more. You don't know how. You feel like you could be doing more. You're not, but you might make enough money where you just don't want to rock the boat. Whatever it is, if you have that need to disrupt, why do we always do these processes the same way? I want to disrupt that for some reason. You have that spirit burning in you. You just need to throw some gas on that thing. And that is absolutely the mindset you should have. So every 90 days, myself, for Instantly Relevant, I look at it. What do we offer? What's our value proposition? How do I pivot this, and what technologies can I enable? What humans should I bring into the mix, or what technology should I exit? So, as a marketer, I'd love to have this conversation. I've exited CRM out of our company because it wasn't adding value to cost. For how we do our sales and how we do marketing, the CRM was an added cost, added zero revenue value to it, even like an operational efficiency. So we just went to the simple thing of MailChimp. We went to just using an audience base. So as you've gone through these things, how have you thought about the entrepreneurial mindset? Is it a formal thing you do 90 days, or is it like, oh, I had a coffee, had an idea, jot it down, I'm going to go do it?
I would say the latter. And I don't necessarily know if that's good. I'm going to preface my answer with that. I think that I have some learning to do where I need to find some balance. I tend to move very much on an instinctual basis where I see things happening around me and I notice a pattern. And in my mind, I already know what that means further down the line. So I take action quick. This can be an asset, but it can also be extremely detrimental if you are coming into an experience for the first time or if the circumstances are different, right? Because what we think is instinct is in fact bias. It is a mental heuristic of our brains that, in the past, our ancestors used to survive and not be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. But for us in the modern world, we sense danger because we've either been burned before from having failed, or we've had a positive outcome, which trains us and conditions us as humans to opt for what is going to mean safety and protection and reward, and to run from anything that could represent danger, pain, failure. And failure stings. It stings like danger. So we are so averse to repeating mistakes that we end up running from them. All of that to say, at times, moving really quickly and with our instinct, following our gut instinct, can be very, very positive if the circumstance is in fact exactly the same. But if there are nuances, if there are new variables, then we could be making the wrong decision because we don't take the time to stop and analyze all of the factors and add that to the equation before making the decision. So the part of me that needs to continue to grow and excel and become a better professional tells me that my gut instinct or my knee-jerk reaction decision-making techniques need to, in fact, slow down and take in all of the factors in that scenario before making a decision. That being said, it brings to mind a very recent situation that happened, in fact, yesterday, where the VP of sales that works very closely with me at Neighborly Software, his name is Eric Grebler. I'm going to make him listen to this podcast because I'm giving a little shout out to him right now. He approached me and said, Mary, I don't think that the email marketing that you are doing is working. Now, that can be perceived by many as an attack or as him stepping out of his lane.
In particular, from marketing to sales to marketing.
Exactly, because there's a lot of aggression
tenuous relationship that tends to exist there.
100%. So for sales coming to marketing and saying, what you're doing isn't working, it can be perceived as something very hostile. And a lot of people will automatically react and get defensive. What I tried to do in that circumstance was, he may have a point. In fact, the email marketing that we're doing has not been very effective, and it is consuming a resource. So perhaps what we can do is automate that and let it run on autopilot, because yes, it's good to have email marketing. I think that's a basic fundamental for any SaaS company.
We don't have in our company. It's about to start,
it may not require the effort and the investment that we're currently putting into it, and that the resources that we are allocating towards email marketing could be better used trying out something new, working with some experimentation, finding perhaps something that hasn't been done yet, and that has the potential of generating more, revenue, more leads, more conversions for the organization. So I had to stop and tell myself that before answering and say, you know what, Eric, you're right. I'm on board with this. Let's evaluate new ways to reach our target audience and perhaps put email marketing on autopilot, since it's not a huge source of conversions for us. So there you go.
That's, so how 90% is how you react to it, right? And just to go back, one of the reasons why people fail sometimes, by the way, is a fear of success. And it's a really weird kind, because I've gone through this in my youth when I was in a sports thing. I would find myself like, way ahead in a game or a match, and find myself like losing. And I'm like, what am I doing? And so to get over that fear of success, because I see these people do this to somehow intentionally sabotage themselves from success when they're so close. And it's rooted in things that are going to require a leather couch. But know that is also a reason why people instead of knowing to take a moment to pause, that maturity that comes, if you had that in your 20s or 30s to say, hey, let me pause and just take a breath, pretend someone's watching me on a balcony, have this conversation right now inside, just taking that breath. Not only does that work for business, it works even better in relationships. You can just give some of the benefit of it out.
Absolutely.
And so slowing down is what it also did with like you said there is, you automate something that adds value but doesn't hurt you. So the idea that, I'll tell you as a takeaway for some people, I will sometimes get a customer email or some type of prospect email where you could take offense to it, or you could be like kind of put off. I'll take that breath, but I also leverage some technology like GPT to say, how should I best respond, acknowledging this? And what am I not thinking about that could help further strengthen our relationship to come together with it? I haven't said I've done this with any relationships at home.
Do not use GPT with your wife.
Right. The full disclosure, Mary knows my wife. So my wife may listen to this, but honey, I have not yet, but now I'm going to start because I think it's a good idea. But the idea for work, if you can take that moment and help frame up a way to speak to somebody or send an email back and bring them in, because sometimes they're hot and pissed because the other person's coming in because they just got, called to the carpet, so to speak, from their boss, who might be your boss. And you got, and so that slowdown, if you're younger or older, whatever you are, especially if you're a fast entrepreneurial ADD thinker like most are, take a moment to pause, because you're still moving 10 times faster than probably everyone around you. Right. In your brain, you'll slow down. But man, if you can, your output and your relationships and how you're going to execute significantly improve. It'll take away that tanking of success. It'll take away that failure because you slow down just to think about something. And I don't think you need to consider all the data. Just consider the right data without having blinders on and repeating the mistake.
Or at least some, right? At least
some data outside of your gut.
Factor in some data. And that's kind of where I think that it's a difficult balance for entrepreneurs, because if they slow down too much, they're dead.
Yeah,
right?
You're done.
And the profile of most entrepreneurs is people who are extremely fast moving and who trust their gut, to an extreme. And that's what has always proved to be a variable of success for those types of individuals, for entrepreneurs. So it's extremely difficult to say, hey, that one thing that you do that has made you succeed up until this point, you need to change that. That's not ideal. That's a difficult pill to swallow. It's something that was really difficult for me. And it took, a lot of reading and a lot of behavioral scientists to convince me.
I imagine like a lab and these people like studying you and you're like, what's wrong with
Well, there's like a ton of books all over and this is all, I do consume a lot of literature on behavioral economics and behavioral science, because I feel like it has brought me so much depth. And as a marketer, right, understanding human behavior, and part of that involves self-diagnoses, right, where you're like, hey, I perhaps potentially I am not as amazing as I think I am,
as I tell everyone,
lucky as I think I am, where I've been, I was born under the North Star, and things just magically happen for me. And you start understanding that just because it worked before, it does not mean it's going to work again. Just because there's correlation around these things happening at the same time, it does not mean there is causation. So it gives you a bigger sense of agency, where you're the one that has to make things happen, which I think is pretty cool, actually. But it also means that you're creating a very clear line between the cause and effect of things around you, but you're also open to understanding that exact scenario is not going to necessarily repeat itself, and you will have to approach it with a different mindset and draw a new line of cause and effect. So there's no such thing as one situation is exactly the same as the next, and that forces us to be in constant flux and to be extremely flexible. So I would say that more importantly than making really quick decisions, it's being very flexible and understanding how much changes around you when you're not even looking. And you blink and the world has changed. So if you're not flexible, that's when you are very deeply in trouble.
Absolutely. And there's I'll pivot a little bit here, because I think if you can give advice to an up and coming entrepreneur or company. So there's a lot in like the Atlanta Tech Village. It's a great center for this. And there's different levels of journey in there from, pre-seed to Series B, right? Series C.
Yeah.
Not everyone has a limited budget for marketing. And I know in our company, that's a marketing agency that really focuses on LinkedIn. We were everything. Well, we were too much. We weren't everything when we first started. And it was really hard to sell to anyone. Mm-hmm. And what I found was if we got niche down, and people come to us to stop guessing how to use LinkedIn, that's the short. And people say, what do you do? Like, people come to us to stop guessing how to use LinkedIn to make money. That's what we do. And when I niched down, I was like, in my brain, entrepreneur, I was like, I hate this. We're going to lose so much business. And we did. And we've doubled revenue every year since doing it.
Yeah.
And the idea is, but now when you do that, what happens is on the other side of that wormhole that you've niched as an entrepreneur, on the other side, it becomes unlimited opportunity, because now we're doing full agency work and our customers are staying longer, that we're growing the base. But we didn't have unlimited budget, so we had a niche. And from your perspective, what advice do you give to the founder or the person, let's say the marketer of one, somebody, your peer?
Yeah.
Where do they focus based on whatever budget they have? How do they think about that? Because that is so critical to success is in marketing, and you just can't blow dollars everywhere. You have to really do it. So tell me about the thinking, when to pivot. How do you think through that problem?
Well, that's where my background in customer experience
It was a softball question to bring in the side hustle, 100%.
Yeah. You put your dollars where your customers are. So, another real life example, I was a B2B marketer. I was the CMO at my previous organization, and my target audience was, wait for it, CMOs. Very, very easy to sell to, because they have the same mindset. They have the same pains. They have the same needs. They go to the same places. They kind of walk the talk and walk as me. So I was essentially selling to me. In fact, sales, whenever they needed to change their messaging in any way, they're like, Mary, let's sit you down and let's debrief, because I was the target audience. It's really, really easy to be customer centric and to target your audience appropriately when you are the audience. It's a completely different ball game when you are talking or trying to talk to people who do not look or think or talk or walk like you.
Or judge you because you are a marketer. Like, they assume that you're doing something they don't want. That's a hard.
Well, in my case, I never touch the client directly. We sell to government.
Right.
Government is a completely different beast. And people who work in government, public servants, have a very specific persona, let's say, and it is not me. So for me to not only have the empathy, but really, really do the research to understand the pains, the needs, the industry, the channels, the influencers of this new market, and trying to kind of get out of my own biases of what I think is good is crucial for my success. The other day, I had my product team sit down and have kind of, let's say a crash course on blogging, because they were starting a product blog. And the first thing I said to them is, you are not writing for you. You think that cat memes are the best thing since sliced bread. Your audience does not. If you try to talk to them the way that you talk to your peers, you're going to get nowhere. They are not going to listen. In fact, they will shut you out immediately. So when you are writing, keep your audience in mind. And this is something that I learned from the great Ann Handley. I don't know if you know her. She's an extremely brilliant copywriter. And she talks about Warren Buffett, and how when Warren Buffett was writing the letters to the shareholders, which eventually became like a 7-part series of bestsellers, who on earth compiles letters to the shareholders and becomes a bestseller? Warren Buffett does. Yeah, and what he did when he was writing his letters to the shareholders is that he did not keep his shareholder in mind per se, or him or someone like him. he says that he kept in mind his sister. And his sister was a professor, and she had some knowledge on finances, but she wasn't a finance person. So whenever he was writing his thoughts, he wrote as if he was writing to his sister. And she was the person that he kept in mind every single time he sat down to write that letter. So when you read it, it doesn't sound like some Wall Street blah, blah, blah. It sounds like a person talking to another person. And that's what truly makes a difference. So, I mean, those are my 2 cents.
The marketers, the takeaway is go where your customers are at, or where they are. And we run into this too, where and we have a government client that does security scanning. So we're marketing a government type of things. And we found as we first started working with them, we were doing what we always did for commercial, which was, try to get appointments set, and it just wasn't working. And so we evolved for this government client just to grow brand awareness, because that's what they needed. We have an architectural company we work with that works only with government. We immediately say, listen, you just do brand awareness. That way, when you go to a conference, they've seen you. You have some kind of name recognition. Yeah. And it's like for commercial, they're like, there's no value in that. I need leads. For anybody in the government world, that's everything, because then they could be like, oh, I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn and you've not pushed on me. I'd love to communicate you. And if you push on some, like you said, personas, I find the government types definitely pull back because of all the regulation. Like, what is this person doing? That perception of being, bought a lunch, all the things. So it's a whole different mindset, and that they're on too, because there's real like job and legal things that they're perceived as taking benefit. And so like, I get it totally. And I think the bigger picture is, in any marketer, really understand your market and don't presume anyone thinks like you. One of the mechanisms I find that works well is ask your customers you currently have, and if you don't have any, then ask ones you can. Do you do this? Do you do any formal surveys? Do you do it informal? Like, how do you? Because I think asking is the way to get the information you need to take the first step to say do better. So do you do anything like that? Any feedback cycles? And if so, how?
Well, this is actually very interesting, because my previous company was a market research tech company that created survey tech. So if anything, I'd be all over the surveys. But once again, I have to take a step back and realize that my target audience does not answer surveys. So if I want to reach them and I'm pushing surveys, which is what I know so well, then I'm making a big mistake. So how does my market respond? How can I talk to them? Conferences. They go to trade shows, they go to conferences, they go to events. And at these events, they're very open to having conversations. So myself and the head of product at Neighborly Software, we go to conferences. And when we go to conferences, our sole goal is to have one-on-one conversations with our target audience and understand them. And we do it very casually. It doesn't feel like an interrogation or an interview, but in truth, we're sitting there and our minds are like scheming through as we're listening to these people talk about their day-to-day, what their pains are, what their needs are, which solutions they're using, which ones work, which ones don't. And it's amazing how when you have a face-to-face interaction with someone, how differently they open up. So again, this is what's true for my industry. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true for everyone else's. In fact, the survey tech that I used to work with is kind of the go-to for most organizations, especially those that have such a large number of customers that if they tried to reach them one-on-one, they never would, right? So in my case, I have a finite market, and it's very easy to speak to a handful of customers and have that be an accurate representation of my demographic. But if you are a marketer that has hundreds of thousands of customers, then how big does your sample size have to be in order for you to get accurate statistic representation of what your full universe of customers thinks, right? So the important thing is adapt, and again, be flexible, right? And be okay with going outside of your comfort zone and outside of your experience to mold into the market that you're trying to reach.
100%. And you nailed so many pieces there. And importantly into that, if you have any market size, because we work with companies that are on the back end, they'll say of spamming people for the last 18 months. They're like, no one's interacting with us. I'm like, well, yeah, because you had 10,000 people you could have sold to. You spammed all 10,000, 9,000 actually hate you. And they're like, I'm never speaking to them again. maybe 1,000 politely, 500 cared. The point is, if you ruin your brand on any market set through improper marketing in a way that people don't want to interact with, or find at best no value, you're killing your market for future long-term growth, and you're going to hit a plateau and then decline. I think what you're touching on there is amazing for an idea that when you're in person too, maybe a takeaway for people, and this is from my KPMG days, is always ask just one more question. Unless they ask for you, hey, what do you think the solution to that would be? Ask them another question and have them talk about them more, and leave it hang where you're not solutioning, because then they know you're selling. And in that 100%. Moment, take it and follow back later with questions and say, hey, appreciate this. Is this kind of an accurate how you, and keep asking questions to summarize it back. The more you do that, the better they get to share their knowledge, the better they feel. And without doubt, the better the interaction they'll think they had with you, because I really like talking to them. And the truth is because they did the talking. Yeah. But unless directly asked, do not solution.
Yeah. And I think that I have a certain advantage there. And so does Jimmy, our head of product, where we're not sales, right? So our objective there, while it is always to sell in the background, that's not kind of the declared objective up front. So we can engage in conversations that don't push our solution at all, because, you have the sales team there to do it. And our sales team does a fantastic job of connecting with the industry. So I let them do their thing. My job there is to find out what sort of material, what sort of resources, what sort of messaging resonates with them, so that I can establish our brand as a reputable source of knowledge that they respect. And my job is to create that brand and to create that reputation in the market for Neighborly Software, so that when we go places, people say, oh, Neighborly, they know their shit. They know what they're talking about, and they speak my language. They connect with me. Right. And Absolutely. What we're pushing there is brand identification, right? Where people feel represented by the brand that they use, or they want to use you because they feel represented by you, right?
Absolutely. Do you find, so I'll extend that to sales. So you set the brand up, you set up the interest, let's say, as a marketer. Now, in some companies, you're founder-led sales, so you're somewhat doing some marketing and sales yourself. But based on where you are in any sales situation, here's a little takeaway as well. I believe drive still what marketing is doing from the idea of the value, and sales, I think, brings into, let me explain where in our offering the problem you have has the value. There's no mention of selling. It's more like, hey, if you buy this, it's more like, let me talk about this pain and where we see the value, where we solve this problem and have a discussion. And if you do this, a lot of salespeople don't do this. They just work on hey, what's the contract? And it's like you're at that point, that's not even sales. That becomes like sales operations behind the scenes, or some kind of deal closing. But the truth is, the driving to the value and don't push so damn hard is really where you are. And even in marketing, you're upfronting that, you're learning it, and sales is really showing it. And those two together, when done well, is in particular in any industry, is so critical, not to sell, but allow people just to buy from you at the end of the day.
Yeah. My main job is to connect with people. That's what marketing is supposed to be in my market. I connect with people. And then once they are connected, we can then sell to them. But if there's no connection prior, then why am I going to stand out in their mind? Why am I going to be their go-to SaaS solutions provider? Right? There are very few markets out there where you're the sole player. Right? And even if you are the sole player, it won't be for long.
That's right. So doesn't happen very long.
If you have a market that's buying from you, someone else is going to notice, and they're going to kind of want a piece of that pie.
I mean, yeah, that's how you become a unicorn. And the truth is, if you think you're the only one, do a Google search, because you haven't yet.
Right. And like at some point, some kids in the basement somewhere are, mapping out your target audience and strategizing to take it over.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, please. The general thing is that you're never alone. You are never without competition. What is going to make you stand out to your customers? In many, many cases, it is reaching them through ads or showing up in front of them. Direct to consumer, 100%. Like if I think that if you are an apparel brand for kids in their 20s, the cool kids in their 20s, if you're not on Instagram, you're making a giant mistake.
You missed
right?
something. Even TikTok,
Now,
I'd say at this point as well.
Yeah. But I mean, when I go on Instagram nowadays, it's the same behavior that I used to have when I was at the mall, right? This is entertaining. This is great. I'm having, I'm spending some time of leisure going through the mall, and oh, look at that beautiful dress in this window. That's what the Instagram experience is for me. Oh, my friends had a baby. Oh, nice. Oh, cool party. Ooh, look at that dress. So if you're doing direct consumer sales, then that's where you need to be. But if you're doing government sales, if you are doing high level, I don't know, your demographic is very, very much in their 60s and 70s, then maybe you should go to Facebook because that's where all the old folks are.
Or show up at the conference.
Or show up at the conference. Or, there's also the fact of the time. What's going on at that time in the world?
Right.
Because maybe people were burnt out of conferences a couple years ago. But let's all remember that nobody could go to conferences for like almost 3 years. So there is a renewed interest
to get out of the house,
seeing people, in being in person, in connecting with other humans face to face. So guess what? Everyone is at the trade shows. The trade shows are busting. I mean, like that's where everybody is right now. And if you are a B2B or a B2G or whatever, and you're not at those trade shows and you're not showing up in person, you are definitely missing out at this time in history where people crave human interaction so much and they're really excited to be at trade shows, which was not the case in 2019. In 2019, everyone was walking around trade shows like this and they're like, oh my God. And now everybody's really excited about it. They're like, what? We're doing activities? A bus tour?
Oh, I've seen New York 50 times. I don't care. I'm getting on the bus.
Yeah. So there is a renewed interest in that. So you have to pay attention to what's going on and you have to stay on top of it. Maybe at some point we're all going to get bored of going to trade shows and conferences and we're going to go back to something like virtual webinars and summits, which was the thing 2 years ago. And if you weren't doing a virtual summit 2 years ago, then you were completely outdated. So I feel like there's a bit of redundancy in what I'm saying, but it goes back to be flexible and be malleable and change with the times and change with the technology and change with your market.
Well, it goes up and down, right? So where people want to go, and now you have to have mixes. You do have to have a digital piece with it, and it depends on where you are in your cycle because digital might make sense for your business.
Mm-hmm.
You're about 15 minutes left here, so I'm going to put you on the warm seat now.
Okay.
And then we'll do a hot seat. But before we start any of the warm seats, it's your chance. Though Neighborly did not sponsor this episode, I want you to know I'm going to give Neighborly. Is Neighborly.com? I think it's Neighborly.com.
Neighborlysoftware.com.
Neighborlysoftware.com.
Yeah.
It's good to know. Most people would have gone to Neighborly.com and been like, what the hell is this?
That's another
Neighborlysoftware.com. Neighborlysoftware.com did not sponsor this. But if they did, what would they say?
That's an interesting question. I think that they would say that the most important thing to Neighborly Software is, in fact, their mission, which is to help communities help people. And of all of the companies that I've worked with and encountered, they are perhaps the company that truly lives the mission and values that they have set forth. They are 100% purpose driven. And every single person that is in that company wants to make a difference and change communities. And that is the most beautiful thing about working at that organization. The work that we do, even though it's software, even though it's tech, has a direct impact on the lives of low-income families all over the country. So what it does is it creates a group of really, really beautiful humans who actually care so much about other humans. So I think that that's what anyone from the company would talk about if they were here right now. We are on a mission to help communities help people. And that's what we are going to continue doing every single day.
That's a great shameless plug. It was well done. I almost just stood up, shed the tear.
But you see, here's the thing. It's authentic because I believe it.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
it's not only me believing it, it's every single person that joins that organization truly believes that, So when we talk about it, it doesn't sound like a plug. It sounds like something that we care about and something that we're passionate about,
It is. And I think if, maybe the takeaway if we kind of move forward here is whatever your mission statement is, don't do it because you think people want to hear it. Do it because you truly believe in it. And your organization, and if it's focused correctly, that's that relentless belief in yourself. And I think that's a big piece. So maybe one of the ideas is you have to relentlessly believe in your idea, but not to the point where you put blinders on and don't know how to adapt the idea to meet the goal you set off to do. So ideas versus goals are slightly different, or intent of what you had started, because it won't be the same thing as an entrepreneur that you set out initially to be. It will evolve to solve whatever the initial problem is. And sometimes you realize your problem was too small and it becomes bigger. So I think what Neighborly Software is doing is these types of companies need to exist, because to affect change, they have to work with organizations like the government to be able to do it. So very good. Thank you for sharing that too.
There's an added point, which is that mission is timeless, right? So even though we may need to be flexible about the way that we approach it and the way that we do help communities, it's that value stays the same. Right. So while everything around it changes, the technology changes, the market changes, the industry changes, the mission remains the same. And I think that's a crucial element.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. All right. You ready for the warm seat? Warm seat's a little long.
Was that the lukewarm? What was that?
It's like the mid sitting on a bidet.
Okay.
Like the warm bidets, those little toilet seats. I love those things. I can't anyway. I like when I travel or something else, I'm like, oh, cool seat. Oh, yes, I sit. Okay, we won't get into those details, but it's more comfortable and way cleaner. Okay, here we go. What's the one thing you wish you would have known before starting your entrepreneurial journey years ago?
It might have to do with what I talked about earlier on, which is that, go with your gut to a degree, but calm down a bit. You're not that smart. You're not that brilliant. You're not that lucky. Certain things happen that are by chance, and you can't rely on having that same luck over and over again. At some point, you're going to encounter an obstacle or a barrier or a challenge that you haven't encountered before. And if you're not able to have a little bit of humility, perhaps, and understand that there are things that you just don't know, and slow it down and listen to others and get advice and talk to people before making knee-jerk reactions or knee-jerk decisions, it's going to be that you'll learn, the experience will count for something because they'll be learning, but it will be the school of hard knocks. Yeah. And, sometimes that learning has a small consequence on your whole journey. Other times it carries impact that changes everything, sometimes for good, sometimes not for good. So we are very few decisions away from making a decision that can end your company. So as you gamble with your decision making, make sure that the bigger decisions you go about a lot more slowly.
Thoughtful. Yeah.
And you consider more variables and you take time. You will not always have the luxury of time. And that's where there's no way around it. So much of success has to do with dumb luck and you being in the right place at the right time and that 50-50 chance of being right and being wrong. But, don't overly chastise yourself for your mistakes and don't overly congratulate yourself for your successes, and make sure that with every single step, you're factoring in why this went right or why this went wrong to carry learning that is data-based into your next decision. So that's what I wish I knew. And of course, that comes from the sting of failure, 100%.
And if you slow down, you'll learn from it and be more thoughtful and do these things. But having a conscious idea that I'm going to slow down is enough to slow down and to do it and just take the pause. So the next question is absolutely 100% data collection for my next book. I'm thinking of calling Asked to Leave, which will be much more humorous for all the reasons why I've been asked to leave jobs and other people in the world. And it's based on the following question. What is one thing, it's humor based here. What is one thing you wish you would not have done in your career or in your entrepreneur path?
Worked with family.
Ha! I made that decision as well early. And my wife did stop me. She's like, don't. I'm like, all right, good point. Do not work with family.
It's so
Give me
tempting.
30 seconds
It's
on
so
why.
easy because it makes sense, right? It makes so much sense that you either, you have your spouse or a sibling working with you. Inevitably, there will come a moment where a tough decision will need to be made. And there is no such thing as separating work from personal. That's not a thing that exists. So even though it may work for a portion of time, there is going to be another portion of time where it's going to suck. And if, like me, your home is your refuge and it's where you go to get away from work, that no longer exists if you work with family. So
Great advice. Do not work with family. I mean, I think that you can write a whole book on that when it went wrong. So, we look back, right? Now you're at time zero, though, relative to the future. What are you doing to prepare yourself based on your own advice? What are you doing now to prepare yourself for the future?
I think about this all the time when I encounter marketers that are older than me, especially when I encounter marketers who are older than me who still feel like they're in the market of the early 2000s. And it's very sobering because that could be me in 20 years.
Yeah.
So what do I have to do to make sure that doesn't happen? I mean, nowadays I'm lucky. I'm, 39. My children are teenagers. So I have that connection with the youth, right? At some point, my children are going to be out of the house. What am I going to be doing? Having cool conversations with my grandchildren to find out what the cool new lingo is. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do to make sure that I keep my finger on the pulse of the market, but I need to figure out a way to do it.
Yep.
And it haunts me, Thomas.
Yeah.
It haunts me.
No, I get it. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to find the company that wants me to think like an old marketer. So I don't have to change. No, I definitely will.
Start selling senior living at some point.
Right. I'm going to show you how to do a wheelchair race. Anyway, that's a great point. So the idea is that how do you keep yourself from becoming a dinosaur or relic in a cutting market? And the other question you should ask yourself, should I be? Should I try to be still that young thinking entrepreneur at 50? Or should I figure out a way to position myself to hire the right person to think that way and just be their mentor? So I'm thinking the same thing, more of moving towards a mentor coaching piece, because I think that's where my interests will certainly going to go. Especially that's why I wrote the book, right? I wrote this book I'd love to make millions on it. That'd be awesome. I'm less concerned about that than I am. I wrote it for 3 people, which are my 3 kids, so they can understand how Daddy was thinking, feeling, and how it impacted our relationships with friends, family, my wife, while I'm building my company. So they have a perspective when they actually get older and care to read of that's what it was like to be an entrepreneur as a dad. And that's who it's for. And if those 3 read it and they got something from it, I've accomplished my goal completely. And so that's how I think about it is what am I going to do in the future? All right. Yeah. Thank you for that. This has been so insightful. We're winding it in. We're bringing it home the plane. All 3 wheels appear to be out. Is it 3? There's probably more than that. You ready for the hot seat?
I don't know.
Here comes the hot seat. It's not that hot. It's easy. All right. Quick questions. And by the way, complete data collection for future sponsorships, just so you know. Anybody listening, but it also should help you as well. What's your favorite scheduling technology for calendars?
I use Calendly. I can't help it. They're an ATV company. I must,
Absolutely. Atlanta Tech Village, by the way, not sponsoring it, but Allie Merritt, you're going to be on the hook soon. I'm going to hit you up. Don't worry. She's the managing director of Atlanta Tech Village, located in Buckhead, Atlanta. Favorite CRM?
That's a difficult one because I'm like about it. I'm going to say HubSpot just because it's perhaps my least unfavorite.
Interesting. We should do a show on CRMs because I think HubSpot offers the best integrations. And I think you have to get to a certain point to realize what it's going to cost you, because once you get off the cheaper versions or the startup versions, it is expensive. So you have to know how to manage your contacts in it. And you better be prepared as an organization to line up a human to it to manage it. And so I see that is the class, the kind of the gold standard.
The star is truly the integrations. I mean, HubSpot is a hub. It does a whole bunch of stuff. And it does it at a level 8. It's not a 10 in anything. So as long as your organization doesn't require any specific
right.
something or another in one of those areas, you're fine. And you can get away with HubSpot for a really, really long time.
Yep.
It does
I
get
think
challenging.
that's a follow-up podcast of let's go through CRM. So I will dive into that too in a second show because I need to learn. I just said no CRM. I'm just going to go MailChimp. All right. Favorite business book?
Well, that's interesting because for me, behavioral economics is business to a degree. So I'm going to say that Predictable Irrationality by Dan Ariely is my favorite.
Good one. Favorite up and coming person on LinkedIn that people should follow and pay attention to?
I don't know if I have anyone who's like up and coming. I'm very much in the customer experience world. So I'm very involved with that community, with those evangelists, with those influencers. And one of the favorite people, at least for me to follow, is Tiffany Bova. And Tiffany Bova is over at Salesforce, and she's the evangelist over there. And she has I think she's the person who has best put my opinions and my perspective on customer experience into books and keynotes and podcasts.
Nice.
So that's who I'm going to shout out, but she's not up and coming. So it's
I asked the question because you're always up and coming relative to your current position. So
yeah.
I was looking for down and falling. That's not who I'm looking for. Favorite bank?
That's a horrible question.
Right.
My bank is Chase, and I never have to go in. So that's great for me. I can do everything through my app, so it works.
Entrepreneurs, I will tell you what, I got a line of credit in our company before we had revenue from Chase, and that's a big bank. They've been amazing. There's other ones out there, but that was you answered that question correctly, in my opinion. I'm trying to get them to sponsor too. The truth is, though, I really do like them. And I have other banks I would say I would never use, but anyway, I'm not going to do that to them here.
Silicon Valley
number one entrepreneurial trait?
That's difficult. I would say grit. Grit is probably the best one to stick to. Because
resilience, don't quit, figure it out, keep in there, keep fighting through
all that stuff. Yeah,
agreed. That's one of my favorite ones as well. Here's my last question. Have you ever been promoted?
That's interesting. I've always been very responsible for my own promotions, and most of them came in changing jobs.
That doesn't count.
So
I got lots of those.
It doesn't count, right?
Those do not count as promotions.
So, no.
Mary Drumond may join the Never Been Promoted Club. You're in. Absolutely. I decided to take the path of make more money and leave. Mm-hmm. But the truth behind that, and I'm going to lead these people with this, if you haven't been promoted and you're doing what maybe Mary and I both did, is leave, make more money, and keep doing these kind of bounce arounds, you probably have this entrepreneurial thing inside you that doesn't want to stay anywhere too long because you're bored and you just want to make more money and you want more of your time and you want whatever. If you have that, there's something burning you need to go examine. Mary, thank you so much. This has been incredibly insightful from the marketing perspective, from your journey. And you've been doing this, I wouldn't say a long time, but you've been an entrepreneur a long time for a relatively very young person. So thank you. Like that, I actually had no idea you had started so young in the entrepreneurial world. And somehow you're balancing between still working in the startup world and the idea of being an entrepreneur, which you certainly are if you're an early stage person. And just because you don't found the company doesn't mean you're not an entrepreneur. You are part of that cycle 100% with all the risk and a lot of the reward. But thank you so much for joining the Never Been Promoted podcast. Everybody who's listening to this point, you can, Mary, it's not the throwaway question. I hate that term. How do people get a hold of you? And if there's anything you want to, tell them to go do or give, but it's your, take 60 seconds to tell people how to connect.
LinkedIn is my channel. Oh, look at that, a little plug for you right there, Thomas. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm active there. I have a creator profile. I share my thoughts. I write articles. I do a lot of podcasts. I do webinars, et cetera, et cetera. So if you follow me there, I will keep you updated on what I'm doing, where I'm speaking. And I'm really happy to contribute and share ideas on that channel.
It is at linkedin.com/n/Mary Drumond.
Yes, it is. And it's Drumond with one M. And if you write Mary Drumond with one M, I'm actually the one and only. So
are you? I'm going to verify this.
Yeah.
Verified. Mary, MaryDrumond. That's right,
yes,
Mary.
Sir.
Mary, thank you so much for joining everyone.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Appreciate it.
Until then, begin and start unleashing your entrepreneur.
Thanks for listening to Never Been Promoted with Thomas Helfrich. Make sure to check the show notes for our guest contact information and any relevant links. Connect with Thomas personally at neverbeenpromoted.com.